The dawn light rolled across Belridge the way a slow tide rolls onto a dying shore, quiet, hesitant, as if even the sun wasn't sure it wanted to rise over this town today. The sky was pale, the kind of pale that promises heat later but carries a shiver in the early hours. Bells from the small chapel hadn't rung yet, the horses hadn't begun their morning snorts, and even the dust seemed to float more lazily than usual. That calm shattered the moment old Granger came barreling down Main Street. Folks first heard him before they saw him, the clumsy thunder of boots slapping dirt, frantic breaths slicing the silence, the rasping sound of a man far too old to move that fast. When he finally appeared, beard disheveled, hat nearly flying off, shirt half tucked like he'd rushed out of his house without a thought, he looked less like a rancher and more like a man outrunning the devil himself. He didn't stop running until he slammed into the swinging doors of the Rusty Spur saloon so hard that one of the hinges squealed. Every head in the saloon snapped toward him. And there, standing with a tin cup of black coffee in one hand, was Ethan Cole. Tall, broad, tan from years under the desert sun, Ethan was the kind of man people either admired or feared. He had the steady presence of someone who solved problems quietly, rarely raising his voice. The beard he'd worn for the last 10 years had always made him seem older than 28, and townsfolk had gotten used to seeing that familiar ruggedness shadowing his jaw. But this morning, Ethan looked different. Jarringly different. His jaw was clean, smooth, bare enough that it caught the light like a blade. Old Granger saw it instantly, and froze. His breath hitched so hard it echoed. His eyes, wild with something between fear and disbelief, locked onto Ethan's face without blinking. "Where's Ethan?" he panted. The entire room pointed toward the man standing calmly by the bar. Granger stared at Ethan the way a man might stare at lightning striking the same place twice. Then he whispered, hoarse, trembling, "God help us, tell me you didn't do it." Ethan lifted one eyebrow. "Do what?" Granger lifted a shaking hand, pointing as though afraid to get too close. "That, your face, your jaw, tell me you didn't shave." A ripple passed through the room, as tangible as the creak of floorboards under shifting weight. People turned fully now, eyes widening, breaths sucking in like a collective gasp being swallowed. Someone muttered, "Lord protect us." Another whispered, "Not again." Ethan's expression didn't change. Calm, steady, controlled. He touched his jaw as if confirming the obvious. "I shaved this morning." The silence smothered the saloon so thick you could hear the dust settle. The bartender backed away slowly from Ethan, nearly knocking over a row of glasses. A woman near the piano clutched her necklace, whispering words that might have been a prayer. Granger's whole body shook as he stepped closer. "Ethan, don't you know the prophecy? Don't you know what happens to men who shave in Belridge?" Ethan sighed, more from annoyance than fear. He'd heard the legend 1,000 times. But it sounded like the kind of story people told kids to keep them obedient or to scare drunk cowboys into staying indoors. "It's just superstition, Granger," Ethan said. "Just a saying someone carved into the church wall 100 years ago. Nothing more." Granger's wrinkled face hardened with something deeply pained. "Son, that carving wasn't a saying. It was a warning, a promise. Every man who ever shaved his beard in this town died within a day. Every single one." A chill seemed to ripple through the air. Ethan didn't reply at first. He just took another sip of his coffee. His hand didn't shake. His eyes didn't dart. He was steady as the ground he walked on. "You're telling me God's going to kill me because I shaved?" Ethan asked, tone flat. "No," Granger croaked. "I'm telling you God might kill us all because you shaved." This time the silence wasn't shock, it was fear. A card player near the back swallowed visibly. Another man muttered something about signs in the sky. A group of women near the windows whispered hurriedly, glancing out as if expecting the heavens to split open. Ethan inhaled slowly. "Y'all have lost your minds." Just then, the saloon door swung open again, much quieter this time. Sheriff Hartley stepped inside, hat low, a grim tightness around his jaw. His badge caught the dim light, but his eyes carried the tension of a man walking into trouble he already understood too well. His gaze found Ethan immediately, and when he saw the smooth jawline, he stopped in his tracks. The sheriff didn't gasp, didn't shout, but the slight flare of his nostrils was enough to tighten the room even more. "Ethan," the sheriff said, voice low, "you need to come with me." Ethan set down his cup. Why? The sheriff hesitated, glancing toward the crowd before returning his attention to Ethan. The ground behind your ranch house, it's smoking. A wave of nausea rolled through the room. Chairs scraped as people leaned back. A bottle shattered somewhere. Someone whispered, "It's starting." Ethan's brows furrowed. "Smoking. Yes," the sheriff said. "And something's moving under it." More gasps. More prayers. A woman fainted. You could feel fear climbing the walls of the saloon, clinging like vines ready to choke everything. Ethan pushed past Granger, who tried to stop him again. "Ethan, you listen to me. Dogs have been howling since dawn. Birds are flying in circles, they ain't singing. The sky turned red for a moment at sunrise. If that ain't God's wrath building, I don't know what is." Ethan didn't slow. "My land, my responsibility." Granger grabbed his arm again. "Boy, don't be blind. God warned us. You shave, God will kill you. That's what it says." Those words are older than Belridge. Older than any of us. Carved by hands nobody knows. Men who ignored it died. And now you. Ethan yanked his arm free with a sharp twist. The calmness in his face didn't match the fire flickering beneath it. "I'm not afraid of a prophecy carved by strangers with too much time and too little sense." He walked out of the saloon, the sheriff right behind him, the doors swinging violently in the morning breeze. The townsfolk didn't need to be told to follow. They trailed behind at a distance, whispering, clutching each other, stepping lightly as if every movement could trigger something catastrophic. The walk to Ethan's ranch felt longer than usual. Even the wind seemed to carry an unnatural weight. The sun climbed higher, painting long shadows that stretched unnervingly across the ground. When the group reached Ethan's property, the air changed. It grew hotter, denser, vibrating with something none of them could name. Ethan's boots slowed, and there, just 20 steps behind his house, the earth had split open. A jagged fissure tore across the ground like a wound. Smoke, or something like smoke, rose from it, twisting into the air in slow, serpentine movements. The edges of the crack pulsed faintly, as though the earth itself were breathing. Every person behind Ethan froze. The sheriff whispered, "Lord above." Granger's jaw dropped. "It's worse than I thought." Ethan stepped closer, eyes narrowing. He felt heat, but not the kind that comes from fire. This heat felt alive, deliberate. And beneath it, a sound, faint, rhythmic, like something tapping or scraping against rock. Whatever was down there wasn't gas. It wasn't steam. It wasn't normal. Ethan didn't retreat. He took another step. Someone screamed, "Stop!" But he didn't. He kept going until he stood at the edge of the fissure. He stared down into the smoky darkness, into the unknown. Then, slowly, deliberately, he turned back to face the town. His jaw was steady, his posture unshaken. His eyes, those eyes people had seen calm in the face of storms and gunfire, held something they'd never witnessed before. Not fear, not doubt, but a quiet, stubborn defiance. What the rancher did next, they would say for decades, shook the whole town, shook the very ground they stood on. And it all began the moment he dared to shave.